Welcome on into the Baseball Insiders on this beautiful Monday. I am Adam Weiner, joined as always by FanSided's MLB insider Robert Murray to talk about Shohei Ohtani's relationship with New Balance CEO Jim Davis and Chaim Bloom's dismissal. But first and foremost, we have a special guest with us today, Fabian and Ardaya of The Athletic, who covers the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are careening towards a pretty exciting postseason, even though the Atlanta Braves are in the way, is here with us today. Fabian, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining us.
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you guys doing?
Robert, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm here with Mr. Adam Weiner, but also Fabian Ardaya, who just so happens to be my best friend. So, it's going to be a good show when that happens.
Sources say.
So, yeah, sources tell The Athletic over there. We love to hear it.
Well, there you go. It's always a good show, and it starts with everybody just saying hello to each other. And we're going to get into it quickly right off the top. We've got some good questions locked and loaded. Reminder, this episode is sponsored by DraftKings. MLB fans, if you have not yet signed up for DraftKings, if you're a new user, you can receive $150 in bonus bets instantly after following just 3 steps. Create an account with us, deposit, then wager $5 or more on any sport. Whether your first wager wins or loses, you will still receive the $150 in bonus bets. All you have to do is use the code BaseballInsider at signup. The best part is using that code. Baseball Insider gets you the bonus and supports the podcast. If you're considering signing up for DraftKings, definitely use that code Baseball Insider to maximize our first bets. This offer is available for new customers who are 21 plus, physically present, legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check the episode description for the full terms of the offer and join us on the Baseball Insiders Discord. If you're not already there, if you want to chat with Robert and I between shows, if you have questions, if you want to participate in interviews like this one with Fabian Ardaya, please join us there. All you have to do is become a YouTube member. Great. Now that all that housekeeping is out of the way, let's talk Turkey. Let's talk Los Angeles Dodgers. And let's talk Shohei Ohtani's market a little bit first, because Fabian, we sort of been joking on this show that every episode come mid-November is going to be the Shohei Ohtani episode. But when we have someone embedded with the Dodgers, we at least have to talk about it a little bit. His market has begun to expand a bit, especially in the wake of the UCL injury news. But from a Dodgers perspective, what is your current read on their optimism, pessimism about where they fit in that growing market?
I mean, I think they know that they're going to be involved. I think they've sort of been chasing him since the time he was in high school. Obviously, that goes back different regimes, different front offices, but they've had their eye on him for quite some time, and they recognize the talent he is. They know very well. They position themselves to be able to spend this winter partially so they can go attack the top end of the market, and he is the top end of the market. Obviously, we don't know what Shohei Ohtani's interests are. We don't know what he's looking for in free agency, so that sort of is the biggest sort of hurdle in any sort of optimism you can sort of have in any team's pursuit of him. But obviously, they recognize how good of a player he is. They have the resources, and they have the infrastructure to have a winner around him. It's just a matter of if his interests sort of align with what the Dodgers want to do, and sort of how aggressively the Dodgers pursue that, just considering some of the other stuff they have to address this winter.
Yeah, and Fobs is like the thing that I had heard going into this year was that the Dodgers, they coveted Ohtani, but like, do you think the UCL injury impacts things at all for them?
I don't think it necessarily sort of detracts from any interest they have, but it's certainly another factor to consider when you look at the rest of this rotation. Because the rest of this rotation for next year, it's a lot of guys who are rookies for this year, and Walker Buehler entering opening day next year. Clayton Kershaw's a free agent. Obviously, we don't know what the future holds for Julio Urias, but he's on paid administrative leave. He's also a free agent at year's end, so it's not like they're going to bring him back anyways. Lance Lynn obviously has a club option for next year for $18 million. I don't know how likely it is they pick that up, but obviously it's another factor to consider. And other than that, it's just a bunch of rookies and Walker Buehler, who's coming off his second Tommy John surgery, because we don't know what Dustin May is going to look like next year when he comes back around midseason. If that's the optimistic return date, and then Tony Gonsolin's out for next year because of Tommy John. So it's a lot of hurdles for the Dodgers pitching wise. They probably have to address that in some way this free agency. And Shohei Ohtani not being able to pitch next year obviously would hurt that.
Oh, for sure. And you mentioned this pitching staff, Fobs. They obviously can't address it like the rest of this year. Mm-hmm. How do you think, or do you think they're going to be able to get that or use that rotation to get past the Braves or the other NL contenders, or is that going to be like a big issue for them in the postseason, you think?
It's definitely something we have to wait and see, and it's a huge hurdle. Like they definitely don't have the established pieces like the Braves do. They don't have Spencer Strider, Max Fried, Charlie Morton. They could just throw out there, and even then they'll have like Kyle Wright and guys like that. They can just throw at the problem and
Completely.
sort of make a game four matchup even more tricky. But like, they have Bobby Miller, Clayton Kershaw is probably going to be in the postseason rotation, even though he sort of said this week that he doesn't feel like he's locked up his spot yet. We'll see what Lance Lynn looks like, but I don't think any of these guys are going to be used as traditional starters in October. Like we're going to have a lot of guys used for bulk innings, 3-4 inning appearances, one time through the order. We're going to see a lot of that. I think we're going to see a lot of these young guys, whether it be like an Emmett Sheehan, maybe a Gavin Stone can earn his way onto the postseason roster, Ryan Pepio, guys with intriguing stuff who haven't quite put it all together as full-fledged starters, but maybe if you give them one time through the order, and these guys haven't seen them, it can sort of help them get by. Over a 5-game series, I can sort of see it. Over a 7-game series against a team as good as the Braves, it's definitely a major hurdle, and they're going to have to really rely on this offense to get going for them to even make that a series if they get that far.
It's a big time October for members of the Ryan Yarbrough fan club. You're going to have a lot of watch Yarbrough related watch parties are going to really crop up all around the country. But keeping that in mind, this team is where they are because of Mookie Betts, because of Freddie Freeman, of course. But there are a lot of names that I think nationally aren't getting a lot of shine because people just sort of look up and go, "Oh, Dodgers won the West again." Like that makes sense. But a lot of underrated players have contributed in a major way to this team having sort of a stunning degree of success this year. Which players would you sort of highlight if someone asked, like, all right, how did we get? I'm looking at the rotation. It's all rookies. Like, how did we get here? Who stands out to you?
I think if you switch over to the offensive side, like Jason Hayward's like the telltale sort of one. Like it's like, oh, the Dodgers did it again type thing. Because I mean, they brought him in on a minor league deal, and he's having the best OPS of his career right now. And obviously, part of it's just because of how he's used. Like he is almost exclusively facing right-handed pitching, and that's worked. They've done some stuff with his swing that's worked, and it's a very clear-cut role, and he does it really well. I think that's sort of what the Dodgers' offense has mostly looked like outside of their top 5 or 6 hitters. It's a lot of platooning, a lot of trying to find the right matchups. And that's sort of what October is going to look like for them. But it's going to be a lot of, all right, if you bring in the lefty midway through the game, we're going to line change, put Chris Taylor, Kike Hernandez, Amed Rosario in the game. And then you can sort of have your lineup where against righties, where you have Mookie Betts at second base and you have all left-handed hitters in the outfield between David Peralta, Jason Hayward, and James Outman. So I think the ability to have that kind of matchups, it's a little bit different from last year's team. Obviously, last year's team was a juggernaut, and you sort of had like there's 7 or 8 guys that you kind of penciled in every single day. Now you're gonna have a lot more matchups, a lot more variability, and then you can have a lot more of these guys who maybe in a random spot you get a random big swing out of a Jason Hayward, you get a big swing out of Amed Rosario, guys that you wouldn't expect. Like obviously, it's a lot of it's going to be relying on Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. You're going to need to see a lot more out of Will Smith, who had a little bit of a slow second half after being an all-star in the first half. And then JD Martinez obviously hasn't played a lot in the second half just because of some injury stuff, but he swung a hot battle all year long.
Yeah, it's crazy too. I remember when the Dodgers signed Jason Hayward in the offseason, I tweeted it. I had so many different people just clowning the signing. And I don't know, you always got to wonder with the Dodgers, what do they know? What do they see? What can they do with the guy? And I think with Hayward, that's like the perfect example of that. But like switching gears for a second, Fobs, you wrote a story the other day in The Athletic that I thought was pretty interesting. And you talked to Clayton Kershaw. And he, as you said earlier, he doesn't know if he's earned himself a spot in their postseason rotation, and he's said that he feels like a shell of himself. I'm wondering, what do you think that means for him after this season? Like, do you think like he could end up being done, or what do you think here?
I think he has to take some time, obviously, after the season ends to evaluate things, see where he's at health-wise. I think the biggest thing that sort of was underlying behind his comments was like not feeling like he is 100% physically. Everyone around the Dodgers, including Kershaw himself, will say he physically feels fine, but obviously he's still dealing with some remnants of that shoulder injury that cost him some time in the middle of the season. The velocity when he first came off the IL was pretty much what it was before, but it's dropped drastically since then. He hasn't thrown a pitch above 90 miles an hour in his last 2 starts. The command hasn't quite been there, although it was a little bit better in his last start in Seattle. But I think that's the biggest thing. Like he has to make sure that his stuff and where he's at physically right now is good enough to compete in October. He's going to be on the postseason roster as long as he's healthy enough to pitch. That's the biggest thing. But at the end of the season, obviously, there's a lot of different factors where he can take a step back health-wise, and sort of evaluate what he wants to do going forward. I think he sort of prefers it that way. Just the last few years, going year to year, contract-wise, year to year, trying to make a decision on where he wants to be. But yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing. He sort of said it himself, like health doesn't really matter at this point. Performance does, and he's sort of just going with what he's got at this point.
Yeah, the last couple years, the discourse was sort of, turned from, as he took all these 1-year contracts, turned from like Clayton Kershaw, Dodger for life, to like Clayton Kershaw, Dodger or Ranger. Maybe he's looking hometown. Now it does kind of feel like he has some difficult decisions to make at the end of the season. Gut feeling, just as it stands, do you think there is any chance he pitches for another major league team, or is it kind of he'll keep riding it out, see where he is health-wise, and decide whether or not he wants to come back to LA?
I mean, I think there is obviously a chance. Like if you sort of look at it, like I wrote about this summer, he has a great relationship with Chris Young, and I think it goes beyond baseball. I think it goes. Everyone sort of will tie that. It's like, oh, that's why he's going to sign in Texas. That he wouldn't be the reason why he signs in Texas. It would be sort of an added bonus, just being able to be alongside someone who was an off-season catch partner, or someone who has a good relationship with. But at the end of the day, I think no matter what, LA is going to get the first call. So I think if he comes back next year, I would be surprised if it's not in a Dodger uniform.
Yeah, so Fabs, I'll end this on a very random note, but I got to ask, what is it like being my friend and also spending spring training together when we were teammates at the Athletic? I know we got a lot of stories there, so feel free to share, I guess.
I mean, it's an experience, that's for sure. You realize how sheltered you are very quickly when I have to show you an avocado for the first time when you're in your mid-20s. But it's a positive experience. It's an experience, but it's a positive experience.
I'll take that. I'm glad. I was wondering if you're going to mention our grocery trip. Yeah.
Oh well, that's just yeah.
Yeah, that was bad. Yeah. So I'll tell the story here, I guess.
Okay.
We went grocery shopping when we first went into the Airbnb that we were staying at for spring training, and I was wearing shorts that were relatively loose. And as we were carrying groceries in, we got in the kitchen, and my shorts may have fallen to my ankles. So that was kind of tough. And Fabian was there to just laugh at me. And
well, I thought you were joking when you first said that it was going to happen. So I just didn't believe it. And then it happened, and I was
it happened.
shocked.
Yeah, that I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. That was a bad time, but hey, it was a great time hanging with you, pal. We'll have to do that again for spring training. Well, now that I'm living in Arizona, my couch is here, and
yes,
I don't know.
I do owe you one though for being the one to wake me up the morning that Mike Trout signed his contract extension. Being
dude, that was
Angels
bad.
beat writer on my second year on the beat, that was certainly a stressful morning, but I probably would have slept through it if you hadn't woke me up. So thank you.
Yeah, because that was an off day for you. You were sleeping in. All of a sudden, I'm on my phone. I'm scrolling. I see the Jeff Passan break it. And I'm like, Fobs, wake up! Trout just signed, and you're like, what? Yeah,
it was a rare late start spring training day, and certainly a busy day. So,
goodness me. Well, it's what I'm here to do. I'm here to wake you up when crazy stuff like that happens. So, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of stuff you can only get when Fabian joins the Baseball Insiders. Fabian, we appreciate it. Hope to talk to you again as this Dodgers playoff run continues. Hopefully continues into a clash with the Braves. I think that's what everybody in America is looking for. And man, hopefully this went better than Bert's pants falling down on day one of a month-long spring training trip.
Yeah, it certainly did. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you, Fabs. I appreciate you, buddy. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
Thank you, sir.
Wow, what a guy.
Well, that was Fabian Ardaya of The Athletic, a good exiter, too. I was starting to panic. I was like, oh, man, maybe I'm going to have to tell him how to use Restream on the air. But nope, absolutely not. A king among men, and a fantastic job by him and great job by us, I feel like. Let's pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah, darn right. Fabian is as good as it gets. That is, he was one of my best friends in life, and yeah, I'm very lucky. I met him when I was at the Athletic. So shout out to Fabs and his lovely fiance Kendall. She's a gem.
And he saw the Trout contract from the beginning to maybe the end of his tenure in Los Angeles this offseason. No, we talked about that last week, and that's it's not going to happen. We don't think.
I don't think so. I think there's a better shot that I date Taylor Swift than that happens. But
You said it on this show, that the Taylor Swift thing, enough that like I wonder if it's beginning to filter back to her camp. That's what Travis Kelce just like shot his shot, and it may or may not have worked. So I don't know. Manifestation is a real thing when it comes to Taylor Swift.
She's got her choice between Travis Kelce and Bird. So Taylor Swift, the choice is yours.
Only one of you's pants are already down. So there you go.
Adam said it, not me. Jeez Louise.
I know.
This podcast is off the rails. That's what happens when Fabian gets here.
Well, speaking of getting caught with your pants down, Chaim Bloom and the Boston Red Sox. This tenure, look, I don't know, and I think we could do like 7 hours on Chaim Bloom. A very complex executive for sure. You watched, he was fired last week during a otherwise meaningless 4-game set against the New York Yankees at Fenway Park. Odd timing. I certainly had to check and see if it was a parody pass. I was like, why did I set up a Twitter notification for a Jeff Passan parody account? Nope, they actually just did this with like 15 games to go for whatever reason. I am split on Bloom. I think ownership, obviously, it would appear dictated the Mookie Betts situation a little bit, but they didn't necessarily dictate the return, which has been an eternal sticking point there. I think he has rebuilt the farm system effectively. I think some of his maneuvers at the margins have also been quite effective. Kyle Schwarber helped propel the 2021 Red Sox to a surprise ALCS berth, but then he kind of tore that team down. And I think at the end of the day, I think there might have been a bright future for Bloom. I don't think you could write him off as a leader or a top executive, but he did take a team that stumbled into victory in 2021 and then decide to reset it, get rid of Hunter Renfroe, go back into bridge year mode. And for me, this deadline, keeping James Paxton, keeping every asset, may have sealed his fate, especially because the hammer came down with the season still in progress. But I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this one, because somebody could easily talk me into he needed 3 more years and 2023 was close to the manifestation of his plan. Someone could also talk me into he bungled the Mookie Betts trade, the most important move in recent franchise history post Babe Ruth, and set them on a course where the best they could hope for was kind of being stuck in the mud. So I could be sold a bill of goods either way.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different thoughts that I have on this, and I get the Red Sox's decision to fire Chaim Bloom. Is he a good executive? Yes. Is he? I don't necessarily know if he's a good or if he's the ideal person for a chief baseball officer role. And I say that, like, I think he's a really good GM, but something that I've heard from different teams or different agents is that he's indecisive, and he's a little hesitant to pull the trigger on a bunch of different moves. And he's also hesitant to go in one certain direction. And we've seen that at the trade deadline, where they've basically stood pat, or they've sold a little bit, and then they've also added a little bit too. And they did not just commit to one sort of direction. And that's frustrated a lot of people that they've worked with. But that being said, I think Bloom, he's a very, very talented executive. And I think the ideal role for him might have been the setup that he had in Tampa Bay, where he was working alongside Eric Neander. And they had 2 voices there, and he didn't have to be like the lead guy making the decisions. And I think that could end up being something that intrigues him going forward, because he will certainly get another job. I think his resume certainly warrants that, but he was also dealt a really tough hand in Boston too. Like, he was basically given orders to trade Mookie Betts if they couldn't get an extension, which obviously they didn't get an extension done there. They traded him. They had to move a bunch of different guys off the payroll to clear payroll space, and he executed that. But they ultimately did not get to a point of contention that ownership wanted. And I don't necessarily know if that's fair, just because they, like, for years earlier, like in the last decade or so, they ranked in the top 3 in payroll, and now they rank closer to 10th, like 10th to 15th in that range. So they've cut payroll and expected them to still stay in contention. So that's a long-winded way of saying that Bloom is a talented executive. He was dealt a tough hand, but he's also a flawed executive. I think in Boston, he learned a lot, and he can take that into a different space or a different team, and hopefully in a better situation where he's got another guy to work alongside with that can make him better.
Yeah, the pass and tweet hammers that home. A lot of Red Sox fans want to take victory laps on the farm system rankings and going from 18th to top 10. And that's all well and good. Great. But at a certain point, you do have to use that farm system to fuel a contender. You have to pick and choose the players who you believe have long-term futures in Boston and use some of the rest to help build up the big league roster. And it seems like maybe they didn't trust Bloom to be decisive enough to take that next step. Additionally, fans might view it as a point of pride winning without a high payroll, but as Jeff Passan pointed out, the 4 Red Sox World Series titles, the Red Sox ranked second, third, and first in Major League Baseball in payroll. This year, 11th, and they keep ducking under that CBT threshold by instruction of ownership, presumably. I don't think you get under that threshold by accident. I don't think Chaim Bloom looks up at the end of the day and goes, "Oh yeah, oh look at the time," like checking his watch, like, "Oh, I'm under the CBT threshold again. That's great." Like that was a mandate, and he passed it, and the team is now sort of exactly what you'd expect out of a team that's 11th in payroll. They're somewhat middling, and that's the reality that Boston fans have had to reckon with. A lot of pros this year for the Red Sox, an equal amount of cons, and now they're under 500 and in last place.
Yeah, and that's exactly the situation they find themselves in. And I'll tell you, with the payroll situation that they have, they want to stay under the tax. I wonder if that ends up deterring some potential candidates for this job. That being said, Boston is an extremely intriguing place for any executive. I mean, obviously a very storied franchise, one of the most iconic in sports. But there are some red flags with it, and I wonder if that could deter some of the potential candidates, like a James Click, like a Mike Hazen, like I don't know, Amiel Sade, who's I think that's somebody we should be keeping an eye on for this job. It's not necessarily sourced information there, but Sade spent over a decade in Boston, currently an assistant general manager with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And he is interviewed for other general manager jobs and is thought of very highly in league circles. And I think if there's any organization that knows Sade, it is Boston. And he knows Boston. He knows the Red Sox. I think there's a lot of fits there, or that's a really good fit. And I wonder if that's something that the team does explore.
Yeah, I see a lot of Hazen in the chat. Jason Parker talking about that. They were speaking on the Sunday Night Baseball broadcast last night. As my Snakes, by the way, clawed into the second wildcard spot. So hell yeah. I already got paid out on the win total, a cool $5 in my pocket that I've then blown on many other bets. But the big one is to make the playoffs. So hopefully they do. But they were talking about Hazen still being under contract and the potential for Arizona to respond to this Boston speculation by just giving him the big lump sum payment he has earned and extending him beyond 2024. What are the mechanics of Boston pursuing Mike Hazen at this point? Because as I understood it, he is still under contract through next year.
Yeah, exactly. And that is something, it's kind of like what was the case with David Stearns and the Mets for a couple of years, is the Mets wanted to talk to Stearns, but the Brewers denied permission. And if Hazen is under contract in Arizona, then I believe they would have to get permission from the Diamondbacks, unless it's like a promotion to like a president of baseball operations. Then I think that is something they can do because it's a promotion. I believe that's the case. That sounds right, doesn't it, Adam?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did talk to somebody close to Mike Hazen about this the other day, and just asked if it was a possibility. That person thought it was unlikely. Didn't rule it out, but I think it's more unlikely than anything. Because he really likes it in Arizona too.
It is beyond crazy to me, the mechanics of the Bloom. So you could debate Bloom until the cows come home, but the fact that he is, since the Red Sox broke the curse, he is the only Red Sox lead executive who will not win a World Series during his tenure, and he was sort of touted as the one who was like the long-term solution. Like, okay, we've been through the fire since Theo Epstein. We churned through Cherington and Dombrowski and all over the place. And deserves more credit for winning 108 games and the World Series and making the playoffs 3 years in a row. And the last thing I say on my deathbed might be Dave Dombrowski was a good executive in Boston, not bad, based on all the Red Sox fans I've seen on Twitter who are like, he had to dig out of Dombrowski's hole. It's like the hole that won 108 games in the World Series. Yeah, that's a solid hole. It's true. He overloaded the payroll, but he did the damn job. And now somehow Bloom, the long-term solution, is the only one who's going to walk away from that gig without a ring.
No, exactly. And it's crazy. And I'm going to answer Michael's question here about the possibility of AJ Preller being let go. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I don't expect Preller to go. And like, I think ownership really likes Preller and they're loyal to him. And I think he stays. I don't think anything is official with Bob Melvin. I don't expect him to return though. I think that is going to be a managerial opening this winter. That's one to keep an eye on.
Any other managerial openings in your hip pocket? I feel like I'm so locked in on the races that I haven't thought about the offseason, but there have to be some, like Marmol's coming back. Yep. I think Boone is probably coming back. I wonder where the other high profile names come from.
I think the other job that's going to open is Milwaukee. I think the Council's not going to get fired. They really like him. Like that's somebody that obviously they'd never fire him. I don't think he's going to be back. That is my gut feeling entering, September 18th, is that Council will not be back in Milwaukee.
Well, there it is. Jake O'Donnell in the comments. I don't want to get into Red Sox fandom semantics. I know that Chaim Bloom did not. I know that Dave Dombrowski was not fired directly after the 2018 World Series. I know he did some offseason contract damage and a little bit of fan service, right? Who didn't want Nathan Eovaldi back at that price after his heroic postseason? You know, there is that disease of trying to bring back everyone who just rode the duck boat parade, et cetera. And I get that it wasn't the best offseason for Dave Dombrowski. I just think Red Sox fans who have already put 2016, 17, and 18 in the rearview mirror and said, I can't believe Dombrowski torched us. There are a lot of good times there, too.
Yeah, and were you talking to Eovaldi from this past offseason?
No, I was thinking like after the 18 playoffs when they traded for him and brought him back at that sort of high price, and eventually, you know, the Eovaldi thing happens and he gets injured routinely. This offseason too, I mean, you certainly could have made the argument he should have been re-signed by Bloom.
Yeah, I will. There's more to that story from this past offseason. I can't get into those details, but there is much more to that story. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, well, there you go. I also think lumped in with this is kind of the idea that like Xander Bogaerts is on a disaster contract, and that's not a negative in Bloom's column. I mean, he is on a crazy contract that lasts through 2033. No one is disputing that. I think somehow lost in that discussion is the fact that he is still a good player having a good season. 115 OPS plus, nearly 4 B WAR, and 15 bombs and a 276 average. It's a very typical Bogaerts year. That if Bloom had managed to maybe get him on the 6 or 7 year extension the offseason prior, you would still be lording this as the Red Sox have their captain. He's a solid shortstop and probably will be for the duration of the deal. It's not exactly a win for Bloom that he no longer has Bogaerts on the roster. It's a win for Bloom that he didn't outbid the Padres, but that's kind of the bare minimum there.
Yeah, because the Padres, they outbid the Red Sox by like $100 million for Bogaerts.
Yeah.
Like that was, I remember like I was next to Heyman when he broke that. It was Heyman and I were hanging out in the lobby of the winter meetings, and I remember the details being told to him, and I looked at him like that seemed like I thought it was like somebody was misspeaking. No, they weren't misspeaking. That was wild. Padres wanted Bogaerts, they got him, but man, did they outbid the Red Sox for him. Holy smokes.
The comment section is definitely buzzing about what this means for the offseason. And that ties into, has ownership decided they want to spend again and don't trust Bloom? Or is ownership just being reactive? This does tie into Peter Gammons talking about Shohei Ohtani loving the New Balance CEO, Jim Davis, and being interested in Boston. Look, I hear the Red Sox fan arguments. They don't want a DH. They don't want someone who can't pitch until 2025. But if there's a kernel of truth to this, Boston has to investigate to the fullest extent of the Ohtani market.
Oh, 100%. Like if a player of Ohtani's caliber is interested in joining your team, you have to explore it. And obviously they've cleared payroll space in recent years, and you would think a team in that market space would have the room to add Ohtani. But that being said, has ownership showed anything recently to suggest that they're going to be willing to go for $500+ million for a guy like Ohtani? I'm a little, I don't know. I'm just, maybe like Ohtani is a special case, so that certainly could end up changing their thinking there. My guess right now is that an Ohtani to Boston scenario is unlikely. I don't think that's something that we can necessarily. I think there's going to be plenty of other teams that are going to be more firmly involved. But they absolutely, if that report is true, they need to investigate it to the fullest extent, because Ohtani's a franchise-altering player. And yeah, he's going to be expensive, but we're talking Shohei of freaking Ohtani. And in Boston, oh my gosh, that's as good as it gets.
Around the pesky pole, he could accidentally hit 15 extra home runs. Like, he could miss hit balls and roll them around that little right field wall.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. By the way, we're getting questions in the chat here about the possibility of Theo Epstein going back to Boston. Nope. That is not happening. That's not happening.
That's one of the funny ones where, like, Sam Kennedy, it was one of the first things he said. He was like, I hear the Theo stuff. Nope. But that is not going to stop everybody from still saying the Theo stuff, because I think people spotted him in Boston a couple weeks ago. You're going to see a lot of the you ever see that meme whenever someone is a Red Sox or Patriots or Celtics rumor and they say they were spotted at Logan Airport? It's that picture of the guy with the dreads. I think you're going to see Theo Epstein in that picture a couple times this offseason.
Oh, 100%. That's one of my favorite things, actually, on what I was about to say Twitter, but X.
On X. Yeah, on our beloved app X.
Yeah, I'm not kidding you. That's probably one of my favorite running jokes on Twitter. That is freaking hilarious. Or X.
Yeah, on X. There are no running jokes on Twitter. It's just running jokes on X.
Yeah, unbelievable. Boy, my mind. Yeah, thanks, Elon.
Yeah, cool guy. Well, we will keep watch on Chaim Bloom's next move. Maybe he is going to head to the Dodgers under Andrew Friedman. Maybe he does go back to Tampa. I think there is a soft landing for him in Major League Baseball, and certainly one that still does allow him to employ his skills. That's it for today's show. Leandro Espinal talking about Trout being potentially traded. We touched on that earlier and in last week's episode. Recommend revisiting those, but the short answer is no, we do not think that will be a thing that occurs. Robert's been pretty firm on that, and we'll keep you updated if that changes. But again, please keep watching. We thank everybody for joining us. We thank Fabian and Ardaya from The Athletic for joining us. If you were not here for the top of the show, he talked Dodgers, talked Ohtani from their perspective, and talked a little bit about grocery shopping with the one and only Robert Murray. Kind of content that you cannot get anywhere. You simply can't get it anywhere else. Except here and potentially in the Discord. If you are not yet in the Baseball Insiders Discord, the offseason is fast approaching. If you don't want to be in the Discord in September, sure, I get it. It's a fun place to be. You can ask Robert and I questions between shows. But if you're waiting to join the Discord until October, November, December, well, that is right around the corner. Offseason premium content headed your way both on the show and between shows. There's no better time to become a member of the YouTube channel and join us there. Again, the episode sponsored by DraftKings, the code Baseball Insider for sign up if you're a new user who is 21 plus, physically present in legal gambling states. If you're someone who gambles responsibly, and if you want to learn more, please check the episode description. It's right there on the screen. Again, thanks to producer Sean Daly for popping that fella back on there. Robert Murray, whirlwind of a show, hell of a week. I was in Knoxville, driving to Bristol, Tennessee, watching NASCAR from the pit on Thursday. Sorry I couldn't go live. That was a weird one. I'll probably never do that again, but I am glad I did it one time.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I did not realize I was co-hosting a podcast with a pit crew member in NASCAR. Now I'm going to basically call you a pit guy. So, yeah, how was that, by the way? Besides crazy.
Dude, Well, it really did make me want to. I didn't know how I'd feel. It did make me want to stay for the real show because I didn't know how it worked. But Thursday night was like there's like a minor league basically. So Thursday night it's like the true amateurs go, then the truck series go, and an expert told me the trucks are like high A. Then Thursday, then Friday it was AAA. It was the Xfinity series, and then the Cup on Saturday, which is like the big dogs. So I was there for the trucks. I was on the, on the track, basically. I watched a wreck. I watched that car get dragged into the center. I got to watch him work on it. I drank some Montucky cold snacks, a great beer if you haven't had it, with my friends from Montucky. And yeah, like thousands of people camping out in RVs for the weekend. I would have liked to have seen the real thing. But I also think it is important to note that racing in the minor league race Thursday at 6 p.m., Frankie Muniz from Malcolm in the Middle. He's in the tournament. He races and everybody treats it like it's normal. So that absolutely blew my mind.
That's freaking cool. I have not heard of Malcolm in the Middle in freaking over a decade. Almost said a century, but almost a decade.
Yeah. Well, it might be between a decade and a century. He wrecked and he lost in this race. And everybody was just like, it's a tough break for Frankie Muniz. And I was like, I'm sorry, literally Frankie Muniz races? I was the only one who thought it was weird, but still.
Yeah, no, you know what? Life is full of surprises, I guess. And that's definitely one of them. By the way, the Giants, it was a good comeback by your guys. That was
good comeback by my guys. Well, the season would have been over if that had not happened. And then it did. So shout out to Josh Dobbs. Josh Dots found Zach Ertz, your boy, a bunch of times. James Conner, the running game was lit. And then for whatever reason, Daniel Jones turned it on at halftime. Jalen Hyatt might be a difference maker moving forward. And if the Giants get a little bit of luck, maybe they can even sneak into a wild card spot behind your Birds.
Go Birds, baby. That's all I got to say. Sean Daly, go Birds, baby. I know we're saying that live in the pod, but I got to say it again. 2-0, baby. Monday Night Football coming up. So
Thursday Night Football without Saquon Barkley for the New York Giants, probably against the 49ers. That's going to be real bad. But heartening, inspiring win yesterday, and I had a good time. After having a really, really bad time in the first half and going out to get Sweet Green in a frustrated haze at halftime. So, Giants football, baby. That is it for this show. Thanks for sticking it out with us, hanging out. Truly a hangout. Go Birds on the bottom ticker. You already know it. That's the benefit you get from having Sean Daly as your producer. Sean, we thank you, as always, for taking us through the show. We thank Fabian. Robert, I thank you, of course. Thanks for hooking it up. Thanks for getting this so seamlessly on the air, and thanks for being a dominant force in the baseball media.
Hey, right back at you, my friend. I appreciate you. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. And comment section was pretty active today. Sean Daly, we appreciate you too. Adam, I'll see you Thursday, buddy.
See you Thursday. We're back in the air like normal, same schedule. I will not be ducking out to another NASCAR race in the middle of Tennessee. I'll be here. I'll be doing my job, my due diligence, and we will be talking baseball again for you on Thursday, 3:30 Eastern time. Appreciate the comment section. Appreciate our YouTube members, and we will see everybody there live on the air.
That we will. See everybody.